Hey everybody, it's Chase with AV Pop Culture again, and today we continue our spooky season focused content with a look at the top 10 horror movies that are inspired by true stories. So pop that tape in, I got you. Let's go do this. All right, so horror movies based on true stories. To me, that is always way more scary. If there's even a kernel of truth to them, that just puts that in your mind that this happened or part of this happened to someone, that is legitimately frightening to me. And some stuff, when you really let your mind go down that road, it gets very scary. And when you add things that are documented as true, that takes it to a whole nother level. Now, I've got 10 here in my collection, but I wanted to mention a few that I don't have in my collection to bring up. One is The Exorcism of Emily Rose, a terrifying one based on, I think her name was Annalisa Michaela, something like that. It's a real true documented story by the church and by the authorities because they attempted 67 exorcisms on this girl who eventually ended up passing away. And the priests were on trial for it, believe it or not. So that's a pretty intense film. Jennifer Carpenter plays that, and she is insanely frightening in that movie. There's another one with Russell Crowe called The Pope's Exorcist. Kind of overlooked. It's not that newest Exorcist movie with him. There's another one called The Pope's Exorcist that is based on a collection of writings of a priest who worked directly for the Pope as an exorcist. And it's pretty good too, and pretty deep and dark, and uncovers some historical stuff. So that's a good one. Then there's a couple of that are like sci-fi horrors. One of my favorites that is just terrifying and under the radar, I don't have in my collection, and I know there's an awesome imprint films, I believe, out there, of Fire in the Sky, Travis Walton story. This came out when I was a kid, this movie. This is one I 100% believe most everything in it. I did deep dive research papers on this story. It's about an alien abduction, but everyone in that story, involved with that story, ended up passing polygraph tests multiple times about what happened. So very, very good, interesting, cool, creepy story there. And then the Mothman prophecies with Richard Gere, another really good one, very scary, takes place in West Virginia with a lot of it's like the Mothman is like this portent to bad things happening and stuff. So I just wanted to mention those because just don't have them in my collection. Otherwise, like Fire in the Sky, definitely for me would be way up high because it is there. But now let's get to the list of the 10 that I do have that I consider 10 of the best when you come to things that really happened or things that inspired things in a movie. And we're going to start off with one that I just recently was given as a gift. So thank you very much again out there. The Strangers. Now, if you didn't know, the writer of this loosely based this, or it was inspired by the Manson family killings, where they were just randomly killing people. That's what inspired this. But he also has done multiple interviews where he said that in his neighborhood when he was a kid, there were people basically going around knocking on doors asking if someone was home, and if there wasn't someone home, they were robbing the houses and breaking in. So he combined those two things, and that is where he got the inspiration for the true story. And if you see, it does say inspired by true events. Now, it doesn't get specific, but it's inspired by true things that happened in his neighborhood and inspired by true things that happened with the Manson family. So when you get those two things, it is 100% inspired by true events, and it's totally plausible that it could happen. So that makes it scary. Now, to me, I'm not as afraid of someone coming into my house. If you come into my house, you're going to have a big problem. But it is scary, just the thought of your safe space, of your home, your castle being invaded. And The Strangers comes in at number 10 on our list. Number 9 on our list is one that I talked about recently. This is actually a movie I don't like that much because it's so heavy, but it is very heavily documented based on true story too, and that is The Haunting in Connecticut. This is a true story about a family that moves to Connecticut to be closer to their dying son's doctor, and they move into a house that turns out to have been a funeral home. And the sicker the son gets, the the more dead people he sees, basically. And there's a lot of twists. So he's dying of cancer, so it's very heavy. But in the end, there's a twist, and they kind of find out that the people, not only was this a funeral home, but they had less than like stellar practices, like they practiced necromancy. And the more he helps them get to be at peace, the more he begins to recover. Maybe. And actually, Ed and Lorraine Warren of the Conjuring fame, they investigated this case. So did a lot of other people, several books and stuff written about it. So The Haunting in Connecticut definitely comes in on our list. It's just a heavy movie for me, and it's one that's hard for me to like watch again and again because of that. But Haunting in Connecticut. Next up on our list is one that maybe you wouldn't suspect would be on this list. But I am talking about Scream. Yes, Scream is inspired based on true events. It is based on the Gainesville murders in Florida. That's what gave Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson like the idea together. They like went in on this, and Kevin Williamson wrote the script based on not just a faceless killer in a mask, which was actually happening, someone that killed all these people, but like sort of the mass fear that it caused around the small area in Florida. And that is what inspired the story of Scream, in Hillsborough and this small town, and everybody's encompassed in this fear, and there's a killer out there, Ghostface. So it was actually inspired, terrifyingly enough, by real life killings. So Scream comes in on our list at 10, not at 8. All right, on the next one is another one that you're going to be surprised about if you don't know the history, but we're going right back to Wes Craven again with A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, we all just got this 4K, or this 4K is coming, but did you know this idea came to Wes Craven in a very terrifying couple of ways? Now, a lot of people know that about the stories in like 1971 about the Southeast Asian immigrants that came, and they were terrified to go to sleep. They were having in the United States, and in this small community, they were having nightmares, and they were terrified to go to sleep. They were afraid they were going to die, and then a bunch of them did die in their sleep, and then they never found, like the autopsies never found a exact cause of why they died. That's part of what inspired it. There, if you go, you can find other parts where Wes Craven said, yes, that inspired me too. But then I also read this story about these kids who had been at a sleep clinic or and being psychiatrically evaluated, and several of them just died in their sleep, and it was all in this same community, different community than the others, but these kids that were in this, and that's where he got the idea possibly for like Weston Hills and stuff. So a couple of different like cases of people dying in their sleep without any cause, like natural cause being found, or and being terrified of going to sleep by nightmares, and that gives you Freddy. That's kind of terrifying, because it's harder to write off as just a movie. Like, why were they so scared to go to sleep, and why did they pass away in their sleep? That's terrifying and sad. But Nightmare on Elm Street, got to be on the list. Next up on the list, I just mentioned Ed and Lorraine Warren. We have to go to The Conjuring. Now, this one's very famous. Ed and Lorraine Warren, they investigated a lot of supernatural cases in their day. This is the case in 1971, I believe. They investigated this family's new home where they were supposedly being tormented by the demon spirit Bathsheba. And now, from what I understand, though, the movie changes it to much more of a happy ending. I don't think they had as much success in real life, kind of exorcising those demons at this place, but it was very well documented, and not just by the Warrens. This particular family that was just accosted by some sort of entity, and whether you choose to believe all of it or not, this is a very scary and very well shot and well acted horror movie. A rare horror movie that has almost no blood, no nudity, no bad language, and yet is rated R on the strength solely of it being intensely scary. My friend Lance and I went and saw this movie at a theater on one of our days off of filming a movie. Came back to my house, and we ended up sleeping in the same room, one of us on a couch, one of us on a love seat, with Sweet Home Alabama on TV, because we had saw this at like a midnight showing. We were the only people in there, and it definitely creeped us out. And we drove home. We had no lights on in my house when we arrived. Nobody was here, and this was on your mind right here. So it was pretty spooky. So I will always remember that, and definitely gets a spot on our list. All right, now we are in the top 5 on our list, and one you may or may not know is based on a true story, but a very iconic film. I am talking Poltergeist here. Now, Poltergeist is based loosely on actually, they've got some pretty specific plot points, but it is based on the story of I believe it's the Herman family in 1958 that were basically, they went through most everything that you see here in Poltergeist. And of course, there is artistic license here, but their whole family was inundated. The child was targeted. Things kept happening. Now their home, as it turned out, was built over a graveyard, very similar to in Poltergeist, but in the real life, it was supposed to have been like when they had the remains from the graveyard identified. They were Native American remains. So you get that little bit of difference in there. And of course, Poltergeist itself was plagued with some pretty creepy stuff happening to people involved. So it's a very famous, like, cursed film. And it's based on something that is true to life. And they did things with the movie that maybe, kind of crossed the line a little bit. And it just kind of has that whole air about it, and it just adds to the creep factor of this very classic and very famous horror movie here. But it knows what scares you, and being based on a true story is pretty scary. So Poltergeist cracks the top 5 on our list. All right, at number 4 on our list is one that talk about a movie that's like, people are always like, how come you don't mention this movie a lot? How come you don't mention this movie a lot? This is a movie that's very heavy, hard for me to watch, very brutal, and very much inspired by true events. And I am talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, this is my Cool Turbine Media book import, so like, I don't open this one, but I like to show it off. I have the regular steel book of the movie, but this one is the more fun to look at. Loosely based, it is said, on Ed Gein, who they found he was like a murderer and a cannibal, and his family apparently knew about it, maybe partook in it when they found his residence. Like, there was skin things, decorated his house with skin, and he did put people's faces on, but not to cover a deformity, just because he was damn sick. And I mean, the brutality of this, when the guy walks up and gets clubbed and his leg is shaking and stuff, knowing this is inspired by true events and some, and like when you go into cannibalism and that kind of brutality and things like that, you just it's like it could be a great movie. I actually prefer Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 because it lightens the mood a lot, but this is the one that sticks out for me, and it's just hard to completely turn your brain off and say, well, it's just fake, it's just make believe, because there's that kernel of true story there that won't let you just do that completely. And when you get a movie that's this disturbing and this brutal, that's kind of rough. Someone like me that's a very deep thinker with this huge imagination, because you guys got to remember, I have the imagination that allows me to create and write horror movies and think up what creative ways to kill people in horror movies and scare people in horror movies. So I picture things in very vivid detail and go down a big rabbit hole when I start thinking about things very deep. So it's very different maybe than most people that are just like, oh, look at that, look at that. And then they walk off. My brain doesn't let me do that. It keeps making me see things in imaginative, like deeper and deeper and deeper detail. So movies like this are harder for me to watch. That's why you don't see it pop up on as many of my lists. Everybody's like, why is it on your list? Why is it? That's part of the reason why. And part of that is because I can't get that kernel of truth out of my mind. So it pops up on this list. All right. Next is one that people argue about whether or not this was based on a true story. 100%. The writer said that he was inspired of the original book was inspired by, and then Steven Spielberg knew about the case of the Jersey Shore shark. I am talking about Jaws. And I believe it was in like the 1920s. I can't remember for sure, but there was actually a case of a great white shark that killed and attacked several people around the Jersey Shore and actually went up into fresh water and killed someone too. So that kind of mass hysteria around that small like seaside town and everything is part of what inspired the novel, and then part of what inspired the script and gave Spielberg some vision to that, the way the whole town gets involved. So while not like a dot for dot or shot for shot, like true story based off of that, it definitely takes its cues and is inspired by that. And Jaws made whole generations of people terrified to go in the water. And with that kernel of truth there, and at any time, there are sharks in the water at some point, and no matter how rare it could be, it could happen. And that's all it takes to make it even more scary. Legendary blockbuster film, Jaws, makes our list at number 3. At number 2 on our list is maybe the most famous true story of all time when it comes to horror movies. Definitely the most famous haunted house true story of all time. The most studied horror movie story of all time. And I am talking, of course, about the Amityville Horror. Now, no matter how much of what you believe that happened to the Lutz family is true, which the movie's based on, there is no doubt that the murders in the house of the DeFeos happened. I have watched every documentary. Like I said, my dad would not watch this movie after my family experienced some things in a house and had to move on out of a house after a very short time. My dad would not watch this movie anymore. All the way up till he passed away, he would not watch this movie. I've watched every documentary, everything I can get my hands on about this movie. There's definitely some things that make you like. There's definitely some kernels of truth there. Now, of course, there's artistic license when you make a movie. There's always going to be. But there's things like even with the original murders, he shoots like 6 different people in the house with a shotgun, and nobody woke up and moved from their beds. Now, do you know how loud a shotgun is, or a rifle? I think it was like first they thought it was a shotgun, then it was a rifle. If you fire a rifle in a house, you think about how loud a rifle is if somebody's deer hunting and just echoes. A rifle is so loud. Imagine if you fired any type of gun in a house. I don't care if it's a shotgun or a rifle. And it was fired in your bedroom and someone is laying right next to you and you don't wake up? Or the people just the next room over, they don't wake up like and run trying to figure out what's going on? But he had time to go room to room and shoot multiple people in rooms, firing a gun inside a house, and no one even woke up or moved. Y'all, that I can't, the logic in me can't make that track. Without some kind of weird stuff going on, without something going on, or without help that we don't know about, without something, unless all those shots were fired at once, I don't see, it would be so loud in the middle of the night to have a big gun firing in the middle of a house. So there are definitely some things. And then the family, the Lutz family, no matter what you think about them, why they did it, they were scared enough. There was enough motivation, whatever it was, to leave everything they own, lose all their money, everything they had after 28 days. So there was definitely something. There was something, and there was a lot of news crews that went in after that investigated this place that were not partial, that had no dog in the fight. If you go watch documentaries, that captured stuff on film, that said stuff, you know, how they felt, and skeptics that felt weird in the house. So it doesn't matter how much you believe. This is one of the most famous haunted house stories, famous true horror stories ever. I love to deep dive into it, but just that little part of it that says you can't just completely ignore it all and say it's just a movie makes it just a little bit more scary and makes it up near the top of our list. So you might say, what could beat that? Well, there is one movie that beats that, and it's another one you guys ask why isn't on more of my lists. And while I recognize it is a legendary, groundbreaking horror film, it's another one that's very heavy for me. It involves a child. So I just have issues with that. I'm not big into that, into horror. But it also involves demon possession, and it is based on a true story, and it true story from the priests that were involved, and then the person wrote the book on it based on these priests and what they said, and the family, what they said. It's very terrifying. Demon possession is something that I believe is possible, so that's very scary to me. And I am talking about The Exorcist. Now, in real life, the priest that performed the exorcism, it was on a boy named, I believe, Roland Doe was his name. He was a younger boy. Now, they changed it to a girl in here, and Linda Blair plays Reagan in here. And she does a great job. Linda Blair does a great job in this movie. Of course, it's supposed to be the demon. You know, some people said afterwards it's Pazuzu. Well, Pazuzu, the devil, like, depending on where you are in the timeline of identifying evil people or evil entities, could be one and the same. But it doesn't matter. It's a upper echelon demon, if you want to talk about that. And just the image in this movie, where just the flash for a minute where you see the demon, is terrifying to me. And just seeing this child go through this thing and not being able to just say, well, it's just a movie, turn it off and say it's just a movie. Because, you know, there are priests out there that just wrote down their findings to hand in to the church. And then this author got a hold of them who's trying to do this investigation and wrote this book. They weren't looking for a profit. There was nothing to be, like, we have to divorce ourselves of what, like, now you always have, everybody's doing something for an ulterior motive. It's for money. It's for quick clicks. It's for whatever. Man, 50-something years ago, that didn't exist the same way. You weren't going to get rich from that. People were going to say you were crazy for that. So you didn't have the stuff to gain the same way by lying about it as you would now, or by fabricating it or making it up. So that, to me, when I start to think about it on that level, it makes it more and more scary. And I believe, like, biblically, that demon possession is possible. And then you add the fact that it's a kid. It's very scary to me. It's very heavy. I don't like seeing things happen to kids in horror movies. So that's another reason I don't, it's like, oh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Exorcist. I'm like, these movies are heavy for me. for that reason. And this one's up there, but it is a masterpiece. There is no doubt. And it's iconic. And the fact that it's based on a true story makes it even more scary. And it makes it number one on my list. So that is what I've got for you. That is the top 10 horror movies based on true stories, inspired by true stories in my collection. And pretty terrifying when you really think about it. But let me know what you think. Let me know what your list is. Give me some other ones maybe that I missed. Which ones of these are your favorites? Let me know. Don't forget that you should see this on Thursday, October the 17th. I have a big 5,000 subscriber live stream coming up tomorrow, October the 18th, 2024, at 8 p.m. We're going to do a giveaway. We're going to have a whole lot of fun. You can still enter. You need to be present and subscribe to win most stuff, and you're going to have to be a U.S. resident unless you want to pay shipping on the prizes, because I just don't got it like that right now. And shipping's expensive. But if you want a chance to win something in case you're not going to be able to be there, you can go to any of my videos and type in enter 5,000, and it will I will draw a winner from that for another giveaway. But we're going to give away some really cool stuff and just have a blast as a thank you tomorrow night. And I really do look forward to it. And I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the channel. It really does help me out. Everything, goes back into this channel. Like when you guys become members of the channel, a couple dollars a month, whatever it is, it really does help me out. You get your name in lights here, special access to videos, my filmmaking, and so much more. And it helps me keep this channel going and making content like this all the time. And I really, really do appreciate it. But until next time, be kind, rewind like always. This is Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.